My name is Alex Hara, and I'm an amateur filmmaker. Despite dabbling in this for pretty much my whole life, I'm still pretty fresh on the path of seriously making films. I've been doing this for about a year now. Well, a year and 2 months. And the idea for this video has been rattling around in my head for a few months. The premise is basically this. I've made plenty of mistakes in 1 year of filmmaking, and I wanted to talk about some of the lessons I learned. Now, to some, what I'll be talking about is really simple. The lessons I learned are obvious, straightforward, and something that, to an experienced filmmaker, everyone should know. But that's the point. When you're just starting out, you don't know these things. Or if you do, you don't understand them. By making this video, I'm trying to demonstrate that. By showing you exactly how I failed and what simple lessons I learned from those failures, I'm demonstrating that you have to fail for yourself and make these simple mistakes in order to become more skilled.
You can hear about what to do or not to do over and over again, but you won't truly understand why something is a mistake until you make that mistake for yourself.
My experiences are just one way to learn these lessons, but hopefully you can gain some sort of meaning out of hearing those experiences. Whether you're another amateur trying to learn, just someone here for entertainment, or an advanced filmmaker looking for a laugh about me learning stupid simple lessons, I hope you enjoy this video. First, plan in advance. When did I learn this? Every film, but notably Escaping Death's Embrace. To put it simply, if you don't plan in advance, you will fail. It sounds really obvious to anyone who knows what they're doing, but to a first-timer, it might not be. Or even if it is, you might not understand the minutiae that entails. You'd think that planning the shots and angles is all you needed to do, but blocking, rehearsals, location scouting, making sure your camera batteries are charged, checking your equipment, or dozens of other things are just as important. Really, I could have used more planning on every single thing I've ever shot. But I'll use my biggest failure, Escaping Death's Embrace, as an example. This short film was about two main characters, James and Lucas, mourning the death of their friend Tom. But somehow, Tom shows up on their doorstep after the funeral with no memories of what happened. So of course, they launch an investigation to find out.
And now that the backstory is out of the way, I can explain to you how I ruined everything with my lack of planning.
The short film was pretty much made up of 3 scenes. Scene 1, at the graveyard, right after the funeral. Scene 2, at James's house, a bit later. And Scene 3, at the graveyard again, investigating. Scene 2, at James's house, was not an issue. We only shot about a quarter of it in the end before I called it quits, but it was in a familiar area. The house of my friend Connor, where we'd already filmed multiple times. The issue was with our planning, especially for the 2 graveyard scenes. We barely rehearsed, only a few minutes here and there discussing the dialogue, so we had to make up blocking as we shot. And to add on to that, we had 3 barely developed main characters, and the shapeshifter, Tom. Wait, I did mention the twist was that Tom was a shapeshifter, right? Well, Tom was supposed to have all sorts of weird mannerisms that would tip the audience off about something being wrong. But did we rehearse those, or even discuss them much? No, we didn't. Adding on to the list of bad decisions, we chose the graveyard we shot in off of Google Maps, not knowing anything about it besides seeing a few pictures. And finally, we chose where in the graveyard we wanted to film once we got there. And we didn't have permits either, but luckily no one seemed to care. It was pretty empty. Anyway, what we ended with was a disaster.
Skinwalkers.
I really just want to forget that whole thing exists, but it serves as a useful reminder of what not to do. Now, the last thing I didn't mention about planning in advance, I didn't even charge my camera battery, so it was at half charge for the whole shoot. The scenes weren't even that long, so I don't think it would have been impossible to plan and shoot them, even with all our horrible decisions before. I'm not saying the result would have been good, but at least it wouldn't have been the worst thing I've ever created. Those bad planning decisions, coupled with the fact that our camera battery was slowly running out, meant that we weren't able to get any extra coverage or take any time and care in our work, which led to us not shooting everything we needed and mainly just making the stuff that we did shoot into garbage. For example, these 2 shots that looked way better in my head.
No, Lucas, I'm not. How can I be? They found his body mangled in the woods beyond recognition. Just last Thursday, too. He was our friend, our best friend. How am I supposed to be okay after that?
I'll leave you alone then. I'm not ready to let go either.
So basically, plan in advance. That's one of the most important lessons I've learned. Rehearse, storyboard, plan every tiny detail. Every movement, every line, every shot, literally everything. And remember to charge your camera batteries. Being on a timer while shooting is the worst. And actually, that's the next thing I learned. Always give yourself ample time. Where I learned this? The Argument and Escaping Death's Embrace. I guess I already described this a little bit in the planning in advance section. The dying camera battery on Escaping Death's Embrace created a timer that made a horrible situation even worse. But that's only one example, and it wasn't a case of me purposefully managing time badly. It was a mistake. However, with an older short film of mine, The Argument, I consciously planned something with very limited time. Giving yourself enough, or even extra time, is always going to be helpful, and I learned this the most with The Argument. It was going to be a practice short film for us. I didn't have any intention to show this anywhere or do anything with it. It was going to be a bit of fun for me and my crew to practice shooting proper dialogue and basic filmmaking techniques like shot reverse shot or things like that. The script was only around 3 pages, with most of it being dialogue, so I thought to myself, hey, 2 hours is more than enough time to shoot this. Well, I was wrong. One of the 2 actors, Elijah, had plans directly after, so we couldn't go over time at all. And at that point, I was very inexperienced with directing and shooting dialogue. I'm still not that experienced, to be honest, but I am better with it. With The Argument, though, I was still figuring all of it out for the very first time. The end result was extreme rushing on something that we didn't even know how to do properly. The pacing was atrocious, the shots were bad, and my actors were having a really hard time due to my lack of direction. Since I was focusing so much on the shots and trying to get everything done within the time limit, I wasn't directing them properly. I would say that The Argument was my second biggest failure after Escaping Death's Embrace. But with that failure, I learned that having proper time and giving yourself more time than you even need is going to be really helpful in a film project. I still often overestimate how much I can shoot in any given time, but I give myself padding now. I have that extra time when I need to go over, and I'm still usually able to complete what I need because of it. So for the next one, it's something kind of obvious that you've probably heard a lot. Don't do it in post. Where I learned this? The We Are Born When We Die music video. We'll do it in post. I hear this phrase quite a lot for some reason. I know that anyone with experience in film knows that it's a horrible idea to attempt, but as an amateur, I gave way too much credit to post-production, and so did my peers. I did say on a few short films, for example, that a bad shot can be fixed in post with color correcting, or something missing can be added in, but it's usually not as easy as it sounds. Saying we'll do it in post is something that I did far too much. The one time I learned this the most, and what finally broke my habit, was when I shot my fan-made music video for the song We Are Born When We Die by Apollo Sunshine. It's actually up on my channel if you want to see it. Basically, at one point in the video, while going through the abandoned house, the main character sees a framed photo of himself, showing that he used to live there. In the video, you can see that it looks absolutely terrible and fake. In my stupidity before shooting, I thought to myself, I don't have a picture of Elijah to put in this frame. It's fine though, I can just stick a piece of green paper in there and use that. And while technically, if I had proper lighting and time and skill, that could have worked, I didn't have that. At the time, I had barely grasped the basics of post-production, so the green screen photo frame became the worst part in an otherwise really good video. The lighting on it was way off, the zoom made it even more difficult, and I was unfamiliar with green screen tools in DaVinci Resolve, so it utterly failed. To be honest, it works the same way with anything in post-production, indie film or major blockbuster. If you have proper knowledge and you fully plan out every detail, post-production changes are a really good thing. CGI isn't everything after all. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you're on set or you're planning a shoot and when something is missing, you just say, we'll do it in post. But you don't think about the implications. If you don't fully plan it out, and if you don't know what you're doing, you won't be able to properly execute those post-production changes. So all I ask to any amateur filmmakers out there watching this, please, do not say, we'll do it in post. Another thing that took me way too long to learn. Tech does not matter. Where I learned this? Photosynthesis. Well, a few months after. A lot of people first starting out or beginning with film think that their equipment is the most important thing in their production. I thought the same way. I thought that upgrading from iPhones and Rebel T6Is up to a Lumix GH5 would bring my filmmaking to a higher standard. That wasn't true at all. It's nice to have, sure, but it's ultimately meaningless. Looking back at Photosynthesis, the first thing I ever uploaded to this channel, it was shot on a Canon EOS, nothing special, but definitely not bad. As for me though, I was already counting the seconds until my GH5 arrived, and after I got it, all I could think about was how inferior all other cameras I'd used before. It's stupid to think that way, at least in my opinion. Most other people would agree as well. Looking at Photosynthesis, it's not a bad looking short film at all. Sure, there's some issues with overexposure in a few spots, and the dialogue scene cinematography was pretty terrible, but all in all, it's actually a nice looking short film, and not one of those problems was due to the camera or any other equipment, it was just due to my skill. I mean, even the audio was captured on an iPhone, and it doesn't even sound that bad.
I wanted to make sure that all the folks could enjoy, you know? Are you kidding me?
My brothers, how could they do this to you?
As you've probably heard before, an engaging story and well-executed shots are the two most important things to worry about. You don't need a GH5 or an Alexa Ari to do any of that. Nobody's gonna care how your film works if it's engaging, or if it's fun to watch and interesting. If it is, any other mistakes or quality issues will be forgiven. I should have realized that fact from the start, but I didn't until a few months after I made Photosynthesis. After shooting on my GH5 for a while and continuing to make mistakes, I realized, yeah, it looks pretty, but if it sucks it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd heard that from teachers or from things online before, but I hadn't truly grasped it until that point. When I look back at Photosynthesis now, I don't think about how bad it looks because of the camera. I see just a normal short film, and I guarantee that that's how everyone else saw it. Now for the last thing I'll be covering today. You can always learn more, and shooting is the best way to do it. I won't spend too much time on this one since it's kind of obvious. Well, the others were too, but at least they had a story to go along with them. I know I've been giving the simplest advice, but as I explained in the start, everyone has to make those simple mistakes to grow, and the only way to make those mistakes is to go out and shoot. Every time I turn on my camera and go out to film, I learn something, even if it's small, like the 25mm lens can't capture that exact shot the way I want. It's something, and I'm able to take that new knowledge and I can apply it to whatever else I shoot. I've seen far too many filmmakers sit around and talk about film instead of actually going out and doing it. I know that you've all seen the exact same thing if you hang around filmmakers. It's far too common. So, get out and shoot. Shoot everything. Learn from it. Every video production and film teacher and any filmmaker worth anything will say the exact same thing. You have to go out and shoot things in order to learn. I know that I have a lot to learn as well. I've only been doing this for 1 year, and there's people who've been doing this for decades who know far more than me. So what that means is I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna keep shooting, and I'm gonna keep making films, and I'm gonna keep learning from it, because going out and shooting is truly the best way to learn in my opinion. I've heard that from every film teacher I've ever had. And with that, I'm going to end this video. I made this with the intention of reflecting on my own journey, and sharing some of it to the world. I wanted to try to make a point. Everyone has to fail, and you have to learn every lesson for yourself. It's like how no matter how many times you tell a child not to touch a hot stove, they won't truly avoid it until they understand what being burned is. They have to learn it for themselves, and you can apply that to any hobby: cooking, writing, riding a bike, or filmmaking. It's been a long year. I had a lot of plans for filmmaking in 2020 that I didn't get around to for obvious reasons. That doesn't mean I stopped making things, or that I gave up though. Actually quite the opposite. I made a bunch of shorts, wrote scripts, I even created this video to reflect on everything. And beyond that, I started a really cool top secret project that I'm going to talk a lot about in a year once I finish. For now though, hopefully this video was interesting, informative, entertaining, or something along those lines. If it wasn't, then I apologize. This is my first time creating any content like this about filmmaking, and I'll continue to experiment with it in the future. For now though, I'm going to end off here. Thank you all for watching.